So here we are. We're getting close to the end of AOS 3. So here's my final AOS 3 Kruleboyz tier list. Thanks to my Kill Boss patron Panda, Why Baron Makes Good Art, link in the description below, and Baron of Dice. They sell dice. Look at the cool dice they sell. Be sure to check them out, buy some dice. Use code MDG, help support the channel. Alright, here we are. So we have a Kruleboyz unit tier list. I think they're not in any particular order, and I wasn't planning on doing them necessarily in a particular order, but I think what we could do is we could start by talking about the monsters, and then kind of work our way down from there. So of course in Kruleboyz we have 5 monsters really that we can choose from. So let's start with Kragnos. Well, actually, let's first by defining what I mean by all of these tiers. So we have S tier, which is of course the greenest of tiers for our orc boys. So S tier is like an auto include. If you're building a Kruleboyz army, this is a unit that if you're not going to include it, you should probably have some pretty good reasons why. Like for example, I know that Aaron Newbaum is running around with like a Gnash Tooth list, and so he's not going to be including a lot of different heroes because he's spamming Gnash Teeth. So it's like, okay, so it's like we're going to take the, you know, in his mind, right, for that list, he's saying to himself, like, we're going to take the army in a very different direction, right, and we're just going to go with this hyper-efficient unit, and we're just going to spam it. It's like, okay, so then I understand why you're not taking Swamp Call Shamans in that case, right? It's like, okay. A tier is like a really good unit. It's not necessarily an auto-include, but it's just like a really generally all-around good unit. B is situational, so this is a unit that's only going to be good against some matchups some of the time, or in certain metas, but if you include it in your list, there's going to be lots of matchups and lots of times where it kind of sits there and doesn't really do anything, right? It's like, well, this... you know, this unit, this game was kind of mediocre. It didn't really accomplish anything. And then F tier is just bad. It's like if you're playing these units in your army, they're not really getting a lot done. And so I'm gonna start with Kragnos, and I'm gonna start him off in the F tier. In Kruleboyz, you know, this he's not really doing much. He's not really playing synergistically with us. He's not really doing much at all. And F tier he is. So here we have Snatcher Boss on Sludge Raker Beast. I'm pretty much tempted to put this guy as S tier. He's the slappiest monster we got. He's a monster. He enables every other unit around him, including himself, with his Sludge Raker Venom or whatever it's called ability, the 12-inch aura. He takes mount traits well, command traits well. I can't imagine playing Kruleboyz without playing at least one Sludge Raker. Swamp Boss Scumtrek is going to be A tier because he can't take, like, it's going to be, it's actually kind of almost B tier. I kind of feel like he's almost B tier, but you know what? I'm going to leave him in A tier because, again, he's just all around really good. The big difference with him is that he can't actually take enhancements. So he can't have Fasten, he can't have Smellion, he can't take a command trait. So the reason I was sort of tempted to put him in B is because the only time that you really want to take him is if you're running multiple Sludge Rakers, or if you're going to be taking like an Ash Tooth and you're definitely going to be putting the mount trait on him. But I'll leave him in an A tier. He's just really good. So like, you could, for example, a Break-a-Boss. A Break-a-Boss would go well with him if you're going to put like Fasten on the Break-a-Boss, right? It's like, okay, like, oh, all right. Gobsprak, S tier for Gobsprak in this meta, in this season, at 240 points. See, the thing is, like, so Gobsprak, when I was making my tier list videos a long time ago, when I was first getting into Kruleboyz, Gobsprak, I actually rated him quite low because he was so much more expensive than he is now. But we've been hitting point drops and point drops and point drops for Kruleboyz for such a long time that even outside of the current General's Handbook right now for 240 points, I kind of feel like Gobsprak is probably still S tier. The Kruleboyz lore is really strong, so he has access to really good spells. He's fast, he flies, he's a 2-cast wizard, he's a monster. You can buff him to get into fights. Very mobile with sneaky miasma. I feel like and then he still is good against, even if you don't have primal dice, he still does D3 mortal wounds on unbinds. So while it's not going to be a one-shot kill for all these little wizards, it certainly puts the fear of Mork back into them. Right? So I kind of feel like he's probably still S tier, even outside of this season. Maybe I'm just biased because I love the model and I love the unit so much. But moving on, we have a kill boss on the Corpse Ripavulcha. I'm going to put this guy in A tier. I think for 190 points, he's really good. Again, he's fast. He's not very fighty. I would like it if he was just a little bit fightier than he is right now. He doesn't really offer a lot of utility, but he's a 190 point really fast flying monster that can take enhancements, right? Like with a fasten on him, like this guy's really quick, and he's like a really good flanker, you know? So I've been sort of thinking about playing him in Big Wah, like taking the big pig, and for 30 more points taking this guy, but I can't fit it in with the heroes. I think he would be S tier if he wasn't a hero. If he was just like a elite monster cavalry guy, I think he'd probably be S tier. I think he'd see more play, just generally, in Big Wah in particular. But I'll stick him in S tier. I think he's really good. Same with the Break-A-Boss. Break-A-Boss is going to be A tier. He's not an auto-include, but boy does he do his job well. Boy, does he do his job well. His job is to be really big and slappy and not rely on venom-encrusted weapons just to go in and hit things. Great model. Yeah, all around great unit. It's funny because like when I play Kruleboyz, these guys never see play. These A tier guys, but I'm always feeling like I want to play them, but they never make it into my list just because of the way that Kruleboyz are built right now. Okay, let's look at. So that's it for the monsters. So let's look at some of the other heroes. So for more heroes, Swamp Color Shaman's going to be S tier with his poison and elixirs and the spell lore, right? They just enable everything else in the army, right? So obviously just straight up S tier. Probably point for point the best unit in the army, right? Poisons, spells, yeah, phenomenal. Kill Boss, I'm going to put him in A tier for the same reason. He doesn't always make it into lists, but when he does, it's not like he's a slouch. 140 points. He's fast, relatively fighty, 3-up save, right? That's the good thing. And that's the big problem with the Vulcha boss, Kill Boss of Vulcha. 4-up save, man. If he was a 3-up save, I think he'd probably be played a lot more. Like, imagine this as a Kruleboyz list, okay? It's like 2 Vultures, Sludge Raker, and 3 Swamp Color Shamans. It's like, let's start there. That's probably where all my lists would start. But yeah, Kill Boss on Gnashtooth, very good. Kill Boss on Foot, however, oof. I'm going to stick him in B tier. I don't think he's unplayable. He's really cheap now. Is he 80 points or is he 70 points? Kill Boss with Stabgrot. It says here on 80 points, but I think he may have gone down to 70 points. I can't remember anymore, but he's very cheap. The only time I think that he's really playable is if you're going to play big blocks of Gut Rippas. Like if you're going to play 40 Gut Rippas, okay, you can take a Kill Boss on Foot. Right, he can stand in between them and he can do all part of the plan for both units. So it's like if that's the play, then I think that he's fine. Same thing with the Merc Knob. Merc Knob's only good against some matchups. Seraphon, right? Just anything that where you're gonna want to defend against mortal wounds with the power of Kragnos, right? Just as a reminder, it's a 12-inch aura that gives 5-up spell ignore to spells or endless spells. So you can plant them in the middle of a bunch of bold boys, and on a 5-up they're going to ignore spells. So if there's lots of spells coming your way, this guy can be good, but most of the time he's not going to do anything but take up a hero slot. And like he's not particularly fighty. So he's kind of like meh. Let's see what else we got. So that's it for heroes. So how about we look at Battleline, and then we'll look at the rest of them. So Gutrippas, B tier. I still don't like Gutrippas. They're way too fragile. They don't act particularly well as a screen, really, because they're expensive, right? They're 150 point screen, and they kind of melt. Bad bravery, bad saves. -1 to hit is okay, right? But it's like, well, I don't know. It doesn't really do very much. Normally, when I play Kruleboyz, I try to play as few Gutrippas as possible. It's like the only reason that I have 2 units of Gutrippas in most of my lists is because I have to, because I want to play Grin and Blades. If I could get 12-inch invisibility in big yellows, I would never play Grin and Blades ever again. So still not a fan of Gutrippas. They need to be able to get to avoid combat, to stay out of combat. That's what their ability needs to be. They need to be disappearing in the mist. That you need to think they're over here, but they're actually over there. That's how these guys have to play. And until they have a rule like that, or they get a significant rework, they have these giant shields and they're on 5-up saves. Right? Like, give me a break. Like, their whole thing is they have these big old shields, and it's like, nah, 5-up save. It's like, ugh, gross. Hobgrots, on the other hand, S tier. S tier Hobgrots. Love me some Hobgrots. 80 points, right? Really good. Very good, really good screen for 80 points. 25mm bases can line up in a straight line until 4th edition. So they do their job really well. They can run and throw their scrap grenades to throw in a little bit of extra damage. That's cool because we don't want them to get into a fight. And we want them to be moving around the battlefield to get into position. They're 10 feet to take, put 10 feet on objectives. And the fact that they can then run and throw their grenades, it's like, well, it's everything we want them to do. Not getting in combat, dealing a little bit of damage, especially against other screens, like against Stabas or something like that, right? Like running and throwing a grenade so that they can't contest outside of 9, right? It's like, awesome. Just remove a model. Like, they are phenomenal. Big fan. Too bad they're not orcs. Boltboyz, also S tier. Boltboyz are the primary damage of the army. I don't think anyone debates that Boltboyz aren't strong. If you're not playing Boltboyz in your army, I don't know what's going on. Boltboyz are just really good and really, really strong. Probably going to get weaker in the next edition, right? Everyone's talking about how the ranges are going to get reduced. So we'll see. We'll see what they're like in 4th. Dagox, Stab Lads. I think A tier. I don't think they're an auto-include in the army. I think that they make a slightly worse screen than Hobgrots for a couple reasons. One reason being they're not as many models, so they don't hold objectives as well, and they don't take up as much space. They have their own advantage where they're 10 points cheaper. They can sort of use commands for free, and they almost they have more wounds. I think the whole unit is 12. I think they're 3 each. And then this whole unit is 10, so they're actually more wounds, and they're on a better save, but they don't take up as much space. So they're sort of like, in terms of like the cheap flanking units, they're more like the Anvil, right? These guys are better at taking objectives, but these guys are better at like standing there. Not that either one is good at either of those things. But I think if you had 80 points, I think you take Hobgrots every time. Right now, the Stab Lads and the Hobgrots together make 150 points, and they fit into Kruleboyz lists as a pair really well. But I think if you had 10 more points, like I think if Hobgrots were 70 points, I think you would take Hobgrots every single time. Right? So, Killbow, B tier, really good against certain monsters and matchups. Can also function as a decent screen, but sometimes is going to do nothing. Right? It's like your opponent is going to either stay out of range. They're hard to reposition, right? Like they can't really, like they can technically, but they can't really move and shoot. It's not like they have a hasty shot like Kruleboyz where they want to move and shoot. When this thing moves, its profile just gets worse. So, when they're good, you know? But I don't think that they're like an auto include in an army, and I think that you will put them in your army, even 2 of them, and you'll come away sometimes and be like, oh, like this thing really didn't do anything this game. So, Marshall Slogoth is F tier. Just doesn't synergize with the army at all. I made a video about this, about why he's bad in Kruleboyz, specifically him. For his point cost, I think what is he, 180 points now, or 170. But what he does, like his +1 to hit aura, just doesn't synergize well with this army at all. So I'm hoping for like a 4th edition change here, but probably won't see it, to be honest. Dagox, Stablads, or sorry, not Dagox, what are these guys even called? The Stabbin' crew? No, the what are these guys even called? I'm trying to look it up desperately right now. Manok de Cunnin, right? Like, what even is this guy? Does he still? Oh, jeez, I haven't looked at this war scroll in such a long time. Does he still give you a second dirty trick? Yeah. No, it says another dirty trick, but it's on a 5-up. So on a 5-up, he gives you another dirty trick. Okay. He doesn't really do anything. Everything about him just isn't very good. He like has a built-in poison into himself, but he's not particularly good with poisons, right? So I don't know. It's like whatever. He's just not very good. And monster killers. So monster killers are really good against monsters. So you would think that they might be B tier, because if your opponent isn't running any monsters, then they're not really very good. But the thing is that they kind of just are good on their own, right? Like, there are quite a bit of wounds, because there's 8 models and they're 2 wounds each, so it's 16 wounds, which is actually quite a lot of points for how many. There are only 130 points, right? So Gut Rippers have, in a unit of 10, 20 wounds for 150 points with 10 models. These guys are 16 wounds because they're 8 models and 130 points. They're also 5 move and a 5-up save. But I think that their attacks are actually a little better, because they have 3 attacks instead of 2 attacks. So, like, and this is not all of them or whatever, right? Because they also have, there's one of them, the little dude with the shell or whatever. He's a little bit different, but for the most part, they actually have a rend on their attacks as well. So they make monsters strike last, and they remove monsters' ability to take monstrous actions. But I think if you have them in your list, as long as your Battleline requirements are being met, I think that they're better than Gut Rippers. I think that they'll deal more damage than Gut Rippers. Their attack profiles is better than Gut Rippers. And when they are good, they'll be really good, right? But when they're not good, like when there are no monsters, they're still actually pretty good. I would much rather, I'd be so happy if they were Battleline, but they're not. Oh well. Anyway, what do you think of this? This is the end, and I can't wait to do a Kruleboyz unit tier list in 4th edition and see how things change. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Is there anything in here that you would move up or move down? Again, by my definitions of what these categories are, right? So S is sort of like an auto-include. A is they're just really good, just not really an auto-include. B is good sometimes in some lists against some opponents. And F is just generally bad all the time. So let me know what you think. Join the Discord. Like, subscribe. Wah.